want to welcome everybody to tonight's forum. Wanted to thank the Lynnwood Library too, and Michael DeLurie, the librarian here, managing librarian, for hosting. My name is Teresa Whipple, and I am the publisher of Edmonds News, Lynnwood Today, and MLTnews.com. We have digital news sites for all three properties. Before I talk about the format and ground rules, I just wanted to let you know that we are videotaping this, and it will be available for viewing later on our YouTube channel, and go to any one of those three online sites and you can find a link. So if you have friends and neighbors who couldn't come tonight, feel free to share that with them so they can watch it as well. And thank you to all the candidates who showed up on a beautiful summer evening, and the audience too. Michael DeLurie is going to be our timekeeper tonight to keep us on track, because we do have a lot of topics to discuss, and he is going to, you'll probably see him giving the 10-minute warning. If you want to demonstrate, there we go, to let the candidates know that they have about 10 seconds to wrap up their answers. We are going to have a 1-minute opening statement for each candidate, and we're going to go in alphabetical order. And following that, I'll begin asking questions with, again, going in alphabetical order, but then we're going to mix it up a little bit and start with the next candidate the next time around, and then the next candidate, so nobody is always going first, second, or third, to try to even it out a little bit. That sounds confusing. It should make sense after we start, I hope. And the other thing is that we have position 3 first, and then we're going to switch out and do position 4. The reason why we are doing it that way is just in terms of the number of microphones we have available to us and the number of table chairs we can fit everybody together. But the questions that you submitted will be asked to both sets of people, so never fear. We're going to run through them twice. Two of the candidates who are going to be on the primary election ballot, Bo Lindgren and Mary Schultz, weren't able to participate tonight, so they aren't here in case you're wondering. They had other obligations. So now I'm going to introduce the position 3 candidates, and I would ask them to, as they are introduced, to give them their 1-minute statement, and then we'll go on to the next. So we will start in alphabetical order with Jennifer Kale.
Hi, thank you all for coming this evening. My name is Jennifer Kale, and I have 3 children at Edmonds Heights. As a parent educator, I have unequal access to our school. I am on a campus 4 days a week, interacting with teachers, administrators, parents, and other students, seeing exactly how policies are affecting our students in our schools. I have 3 children in the performing arts. Arts education is incredibly important to me. The arts and humanities are what will foster creative thought so that our children will succeed in our tech future. As a parent of 1 child with an IEP, individualized education plan, I am fully aware of how difficult it is to get the help that our children sometimes need. And I want to make this a priority if I am elected to the school board. My background is in education and accounting, and so I will also be aware of how to make the budget work for us and to use your tax dollars wisely.
Thank you very much. And now we'll go on to Rory Grace.
Hi, I'm Rory Grace. I have 3 children right there, served by the Edmonds School District at Maplewood Co-op. I'm running because I believe that public schools are the heart of every community, and access to a good public education is the bedrock of a prosperous and equitable society. And I was compelled to run after the teacher layoffs. I know the ripple effects of that decision are going to be felt in our community. I've worked as a substitute teacher and an assistant grant researcher in a public school many years ago, but more recently I've worked in public media and educational media for the local PBS member station in Seattle and for ParentMap. And I've served on a nonprofit board for the last 5 years and advocated for policies that address domestic violence and gun violence prevention. So they're very familiar with me in Olympia. Running out of time. All right, I'll do all I can to advocate for the very best interest of every student in our district, and excited to share more of my ideas.
Thank you very much. Gary Noble, who is the incumbent in the position.
Thank you all for coming to watch this forum. My name is Gary Noble, and I've passed the public school. I've been on the school board for 16 years and have served as president and vice president. I've volunteered in our district for over 30 years, ever since our children started in the schools here. And I've been everything from a PTA officer to a middle school math tutor. I'm also trustee for the Foundation for Edmonds School District. I'm proud of our recent accomplishments. I've worked to improve our schools with state-of-the-art replacements for Aldenwood, Lynnwood, Glendale, Mountlake Terrace, and Madrona AA. Our state test scores and graduation rates exceed state averages. We have maintained financial integrity through funding increases and decreases. My priorities are to increase student achievement, hiring and retaining high-quality teaching and support staff, and lowering class sizes. I have the experience, commitment, and leadership to continue to represent you and your children in our district. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So my first question that I had drafted did actually hit a nerve of questions that I have many of here. But I'm going to start with kind of a high-level question, and this has to do with the school district funding in general. And we're going to start with Rory Graves, but here's the question. It seems that funding of the school district is on the minds of most voters. As a school board director, how would you address the concerns? This is, again, high level. We'll get to details in a bit. That no matter how many levies voters approve, there never seems to be enough money to meet the district's needs. Put another way, how can voters be assured their money is being spent wisely? Ms. Graves, you can go first.
Well, I think, transparency is really important, shared decision-making when budget decisions are being made. With the layoffs, that decision was made the day before certificated staff were supposed to be on contract. And I think it could have been handled better. I think we could have had a lot more discussions about where other cuts could have been made to save those teacher jobs. And being responsible with the budget. And, I've watched as legislators in our state fail for years to fully fund basic education. We had the McCleary lawsuit in 2012, and I've been really frustrated. And I want to acknowledge the challenges the board has had. All the decisions recently made in unfunded mandates with that budget, they've had a lot to grapple with, and I'm sure it's been incredibly challenging. But I think, having those conversations and having more people at the table and being more transparent, there's a lot of confusion too. Everyone I've talked to doesn't quite understand where the money's going, why they're having to do these cuts. Other districts have a similar situation and they're not laying off teachers the way that we are. So we really need to look closely at the budget and understand where that money's going and why we're having to make such difficult decisions. And I think that's, and I think we should have spent more time exploring alternative options too. If elected to the board, my top priority would be to fund programs proven to help student outcomes. Sorry, okay, that's time.
Thank you very much. Mr. Noble, you have 1 minute.
School funding is really, really complex. I think the first step actually is talking to the legislature because the funding is so complex and it's been different every year, almost since I've been on the board. It makes it very, very difficult to make any kind of long-range planning when your funding is different and different, sometimes more, sometimes less every year. This was a particularly difficult year because of the reduction in our levy authority, the amount that we could collect from local taxes. But that being so, from going forward, the funding should be much more stable and it should be much easier to do a little bit long-range predictions and follow through with improving the program.
Thank you very much. Ms. Kale?
I agree with Gary Noble that one of our first things that we need to do is go back to the legislature. Right now, the legislature the state has mandated various things that we can't even afford to do, such as it is preferred that schools have a ratio of 250 students to one school psychologist. Lynnwood High School has 350 students per school psychologist, which averages out to 3 hours that each student gets per year. And that includes mental health, college counseling, figuring out what they're doing in school, which is not enough. Going back to the legislators and explaining that how are we supposed to meet our state-mandated requirements without the funding is imperative. And this is something that hasn't been done recently. There hasn't been a lot of interaction with the legislators in explaining why we need to have more funding.
Thank you. Again, we're going to get to some of these more drilled down questions about the budget and funding in a moment when we get to the questions you've asked, but let's go on to question 2, a little bit more high level again. Name your top 3 priorities for the coming school year if you are elected or re-elected to the Edmonds School District Board of Directors. And we will start with Mr. Noble. You have 1 minute.
My top 2 priorities are improving student achievement and lowering class sizes. And that means things like more, I'm considering we did a little bit of raising class sizes at the time, but it certainly will be corrected in the future. On student achievement, it has to go on very many levels. We have a hugely diverse district, and so the increasing achievement or the diversity of that requires really special attention on an individual basis, particularly the students that are not quite making the grade. On class sizes, it is simply a funding issue, and that is my highest priority. So as funding becomes available, which it should in the next few years, class sizes for grades 4 to 12 certainly we reduce. We've already significantly reduced class sizes in K through 3 under 20 classroom in K through 3.
Thank you very much. Ms. Kale?
Clarification, was it top 3 or top 2?
I said top 3, but if you only have 2 or 1, that's your prerogative, of course.
So my top 3 priorities, number 1 is communication. I feel like there's been a lack of communication between the school board and administration and parents and teachers in our schools. Some easy fixes for this is utilizing social media more to actually show policy things instead of just focusing on student of the month, which is important, but that's not going to affect all of our families in the schools. The second one that is a priority for me and also easy initial fix is making the IEP process easier. If your student is struggling in school, you should be able to click on a button on the front page of every school website, and our district website says, click here to find out who to talk to in your school. And the third one is maintaining our arts funding and making sure that we're not losing any more of our arts teachers, drama, musical theater, music in our schools.
Thank you. See, I'm giving them time, and they're actually covering the questions I'm going to ask later, so you guys are doing good. Ms. Graves, you have 1 minute.
My top 3 priorities are transparency and accountability for the decisions that are made. I think we need more stakeholder input too, and to have those conversations more fleshed out when decisions are made. One example where that went wrong is the right at school decision that impacted before and after school care for parents in our district. That came as a surprise to many, and there were huge changes in budgets, and those had tremendous impacts on families, and I don't think there was enough opportunity for parents to share those concerns before that decision was made. Another priority is equity, ensuring that the needs of all students are met, including those with IEPs and the special education program. There's a lot of disparities between some of our schools too. We have schools where 10% are on free reduced lunch, and then 75%. We need to make sure that the needs of those schools are being met, and that we're thinking about serving all those students. And the third thing is student outcomes, just ensuring that we are doing everything we can to improve the graduation rate and other measures of student success.
Thank you. Well, my next question actually was going to use the right at school as an example, but I'll just kind of keep it as more generic in that in general, how would you suggest, and we'll go with the magic number 3, but it can be any number of steps you think are important, as a board member to better engage and empower citizens in the process of school board decision making? So give some specific examples. You each touched on that a little bit, but maybe there's some other ideas you have for that to be able to make it give citizens more opportunity for involvement. And we'll start with Ms. Kale.
Well, I already talked about how we can use social media to better reach our people. I think one of the best ways is using Facebook, having advance notices for what our board meetings are going to be covered, so people know exactly what the agendas are going in. We can also use multiple platforms for reaching people. Right now, parents get emails, citizens get newsletters, and students will get flyers being sent home. There's no reason why we can't broadcast our school agendas on social media, having it on our website, having citizens having more information from our administrators and our board, they know what's going on. And that includes just making sure that we're also broadcasting these in multiple languages so that we're reaching more of our community.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Graves?
I think it's important to mention that we have Edmonds has a unique shared decision-making contract, Draft 5, where when decisions are made, it's supposed to be transparent and all the stakeholders are supposed to be involved. And we didn't see that with Right at School. I actually talked to someone at the Boys and Girls Club, Alderwood, and they said they didn't know about that announcement until the day it was announced to everyone. And I have concerns about how decisions like that are going to impact the nonprofit organizations in our communities. We're going to a for-profit organization from out of state to serve our kids. I think there are concerns with stakeholders that are going to be impacted by those decisions weren't even a part of that process. So yes, we should make the board meetings more accessible too. It takes a certain amount of privilege to get to a board meeting. It means you're available in the evening. It means you have transportation. It means you have childcare. And anything we can do to make that more accessible, podcasts, streaming it on Facebook or wherever else, I think is a good option too.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rumble.
Yeah, I actually agree with everything everyone said. We do need to improve our communication process. I think using social media more widely is a really positive thing. We have not done that as effectively as I believe we could. Even our newsletters, as was mentioned, if we talk more about policies and things that are going on in the district and less about just achievements that have happened, I think that would be a real positive thing. If we had talked about even our newsletter, the fact that we were considering revising after school programs in our district before we even chose a provider, that would have been a big plus if we had community meetings to talk about it before we made even the decisions to look for somebody. It would have been a plus if we didn't do that. That's the kind of improvement we need to have.
Thank you very much. So my next question is going to be related to equity and how you would work with district staff to encourage and promote fairness and equity for all of the district students. But I'm going to tack on something that somebody asked a question about, and that was, how do you plan to have equity with all of the different in-school programs? And the example was arts versus sports. In other words, do you feel like we're maybe emphasizing one over the other? How do you kind of make sure there's a even playing field? I guess maybe that's not a good analogy. You're just sorry, first thing that came to my head. But how would you address that? So we will start with let's see, where are we? We'll start with Ms. Grace.
I think, 1 minute's a really short amount of time to talk about equity in our schools, but we have a funding system that doesn't target all the resources based on student and community need. I think we really need to make sure that we're being accountable to that, and ensuring that students have the help they need to do things. I was reading, our average graduation rate is 84%, and that number drops to 75% for Hispanic and Latino students, and our largest minority group in the district. There's a lot of numbers like that out there. You can see the disparities. We need to make sure that students have the help they need for things like applying for FAFSA. I read that only a small percentage of students in our district actually ended up applying for the aid they were entitled to. Sorry, I ran out of time.
That's okay. So you know what? To be fair and equitable, let's save the arts and sports question for a separate question, because that was really unfair of me to expect you to do that in 1 minute. Okay. So I'm going to move that one on to the follow-up. So let's just continue with just the general issue of how to encourage and promote fairness and equity for all of the district students, and we'll go to Mr. Noble next.
Equity is such a huge subject. It requires an incredibly multi-tiered approach. We start at the top we passed a really landmark equity policy that's become a model for other school districts in our area. We also hired an equity director, an executive director. But that from the top down really sets only the mood for the district and does not change what's happening on the bottom. We need to train people. Both our administrators have gone through, including myself, Undoing Institutional Racism workshop. but what is really required is down in the active classroom. It's like 1,000 solutions for 1,000 individual students, and each student needs an individual solution. So I advocate hiring more counselors and more student advocates to help with that.
Thank you very much. Ms. Kale?
We are fortunate at Edmonds Heights to have one of the first equity teams at our school that will then be broadened out to other schools, and I was fortunate to be able to join the equity team at the end of the school year. So I think one of the first things we can do is take our model and broaden it to all of the schools in our district. Another big issue that we have is the inequitable funding between schools, and we need to figure out if school A, which is privileged, needs something and the parents can just raise money to buy that, how can we then make sure that school B, who doesn't have the privilege of parents who can just raise the money to buy things, is still going to get the things that their students need? And this is going to have to be looked at a budget level and figuring out how we can more equitably pay for things in the district and do fundraising for our schools.
Thank you very much. Okay, now we're going to get to the arts versus sports versus all those other programs. How do you decide how to juggle all those priorities at the school program level? And this is actually getting into the reader questions, so I'm really glad we're there. And so we will go with Mr. Noble to start.
Interesting question comparing arts and sports, because arts is part of the curriculum, it's part of the classes that we provide in the schools. And sports is an extracurricular activity which is usually not funded by schools, it's funded by the support groups. For arts education, I certainly promote this openness. One of the things we do now is provide a lot of art courses, have a student fee. We pay those student fees for any students who are on free reduced lunch. My goal is within a year to eliminate student fees entirely on arts programs. So we just totally encourage it. My children were in band, and that's probably a big part of it that keep a lot of kids in school.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Kale?
I think it's important for us to make sure that we are fully funding our arts programs in schools. There's so many opportunities for our children to do sports in school and outside of school in various leagues, travel leagues, traditional leagues, that I think arts is part of the curriculum, as Mr. Noble said, and I think that's important to remember in terms of how we're looking at equity between sports and arts.
Okay, thank you very much. All right. And Ms. Grace, apologies, I was ahead of myself by a question. Go for it.
I think it's crucial that we fund the arts. There's so many skills that children learn. My son's in a couple of different music programs at his school, and when they're learning, even just learning how to read music, they're using math skills, they're using all kinds of skills that are academic in those art courses, and it's making it fun though. It's not just this dry mathematical thing. And I think understanding the crossover between those academic subjects and how we can incorporate them into the arts and help nurture those passions of children is really important. And I think, doing everything we can to fund those is important. We've had students coming to the last few board meetings advocating for their drama teacher, Ms. Mitchell-Powell, that was laid off, and talking about what a difference having that drama program has made in their lives. And it's hard to quantify art the way that you can, like a bubble test for a math problem, but I think it's crucial to have those programs. And sports too. Physical activity is important, but.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, so the next question is this one. It's kind of a long one, but it's, if you need me to repeat any part of it, please let me know. According to the National Institute of Health, 1 in 5 people struggle with dyslexia. Parents of dyslexic students in the district are paying thousands of dollars to get a private diagnosis, dyslexia-specific tutoring, even educational advocates to help them navigate the special education process. There's a new bill that was passed in the legislature that requires by 2021 school year all Washington districts screen kindergarten and second graders for dyslexia and provide interventions. What is your plan to support these families and train teachers for these new screenings and dyslexia-specific interventions for students identified? And this came from somebody in the audience. So we'll start with Ms. Graves.
I am trying to better understand this because I recently submitted a public record request to our district to understand how much money is being spent on litigation around IEPs and special education, because I've heard feedback from parents that they are not getting the resources they need when they need them to make sure their students' needs are met. And I haven't gotten that information yet. I'm going to benchmark it against a couple other similar districts, but I think it's crucial that we ensure that students are getting the support we need, and that, if parents are having to pay out of pocket for those things, we know there's going to be disparities between parents that can afford to do that and those that can't. We also need to add neurodiverse students to the equity statement. The district sent out a survey recently. I've gotten a lot of feedback from parents that, they were talking about diversity. They didn't talk about neurodiverse students, and I think that's important that we make sure that's part of our equity statement in our 2025 blueprint. So,
thank you. Mr. Noble?
Well, special education, which includes dyslexia and other issues, is so important, and it is one of the things that our district tries very hard to fund as well as they can. We put a lot of local levy money into special education because the funding from the state does not cover our actual costs. This is not going to improve in the near future unless state funding changes, because we just don't have the funds to do it. But it's certainly a huge, huge priority for me. These are students that are really on the cusp of need, so I will endeavor to improve our special education and dyslexia specifically as much as humanly possible.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Kim?
Let me speak to you from my own personal experience. My middle child at the age of 5 was diagnosed with a speech impairment. We didn't have any problems getting an IEP for her speech. However, her speech impairment led to problems with her learning how to read and write. It took me a year of constantly being at school asking, who do I talk to? Who do I talk to next? How do I get this fixed? A year before we even got an appointment with a school psychologist to have her evaluated. I won't bore you with the various things that I was told before then, but I'm sure you can use your imagination. 6 months of evaluation before she was found to, have a problem learning how to read. She lost an entire year of reading education because of those delays. This cannot continue. One of my primary things that I'm running for is to make the process easier for parents to get their diagnosis. It is demonstrably less expensive for us to diagnose earlier in a child's school career than to have to clean up the pieces when they wait until middle school or later for dyslexia or other diagnoses.
Thank you. Okay, here's another audience question. And I'm going to guess this is a choice between one of these two things, but I'm going to read it out loud, and if the questioner wants to clarify in some way, feel free. The question is, do we need more cops or more counselors on our campus? Why or why not? Well, explain your choice, I guess, is the question. And we are going to start with Mr. Noble on that one.
That's a really, really easy answer, and the answer is counselors. We certainly don't have enough counselors for our students. We don't have enough family advocates for our students. Our students, with the great diversity we have, the large rate reduced lunch rate, large amount of students of color, we have constant issues. Students that have problems at home that need to be addressed. Our family advocates do that, but there's not enough of them to help each student. We don't have enough counselors to help each student that might have a personal problem, a suicide thought, or whatever. As she mentioned, the state requirements or state suggestions for the amount of counselors is hugely larger than the amount of counselors that the state actually funds. So counselors is really, really important. I would give anything to have more counselors in our schools.
Thank you. Ms. Kale?
I agree with Mr. Noble. Of course, we need more counselors, but there are also other things that we can do that don't require the full funding of counselors. I know of a school in Seattle that has a special program. They had a company come in and teach the school how to work going beyond anti-bullying, but also making sure that no child feels left alone, no child feels ostracized from their peers. If the program includes, if you see a child sitting by themselves at the lunch table, somebody goes and sits with them to make sure that we're not isolating our students, because one of the biggest problems that we have, it's not just bullying, it's feeling a disconnect with peers. Social media doesn't help with that, but there are things that we can do that don't just involve increasing counselors, which the state is reluctant to fund.
Thank you. Ms. Graves?
I think it's important to acknowledge that the school-to-prison pipeline is real, and school officials have no clear role in supervising or evaluating the officers currently stationed in our schools. And there's no formal public-facing reporting tools that I'm aware of. And we can't ensure that we're not perpetuating those disparities in school discipline without proper oversight. So I think that's really important. And my mom's a school psychologist. I think we need more counselors. We need more psychologists in school. Her caseload is enormous, and I don't know how she does it. And if there's ever a way to have an impact on a student, it's giving them those kinds of resources and not having an officer in school. I think that's, by the time you need an officer on campus to deal with a problem, you haven't addressed that problem early enough. And I'd rather do it further upstream with students by having those resources available to them.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, and we'll have another question from the audience, and this is actually something that has come up not so much this year, but at least I don't remember it this year, but it has been an issue in the past, and it's related to the school board addressing a controversial topic called tire crumb rubber infill, and the issue is that there are some parents who've been concerned about the health and possible environmental effects of that infill on playfields, and their studies are, my understanding is the research is still being done, the studies are still being conducted, but the district has continued to use the tire crumb rubber infill with the exception of a field in Edmonds, because the city council in Edmonds has actually put a temporary ban on it until the studies are done. So what is your position on this issue? Should the district continue to use tire crumb rubber in its playfields, or should it consider other options? And we will start with Ms. Graves.
I think it's important, like you said, there's no longitudinal study showing the impacts and that connection to cancer for crumb rubber yet. There's been a few studies that have found that connection, and there's one that's being funded right now, but we won't know for years what the results of that study are. I think it might make sense to explore other options while we're doing these building projects and see if there's a more environmentally friendly option that is not going to have those health impacts that we're worried about. And I think it's worth putting in the research to see what other options there are. And removing those crumb rubber fields would be an incredible expense. And with our limited funds for things, I think we'd have to put a lot of thought into the reasoning behind that and make sure that we're being responsible with our funding if we did that. But I think putting a moratorium on using it for the time being is a good option, and exploring other options.
Thank you very much. Ms. Kale? Did I go out of order? I'm sorry, did I mess up?
You can go this way.
Well, it's actually whoever was last. So if I messed up, tell me, because I'm starting to get a little rummy with all of them. So if I'm out of order, you get me back on track, okay? If you feel like you've been going a certain direction, should we go to Mr. Noble?
Either.
Okay. You can flip a coin, I don't care. Okay, thank you. I'll try to get that one straight before we get to the next one. Thank you.
Crumb rubber is an interesting issue. Right now, the district position, we certainly support the city of Edmonds, and the last field we're doing at Edmonds Woodway baseball field, and we're putting in an alternative to crumb rubber, an organic material. It costs about $100,000 more than from Rubber would, so it's an additional expense, but it's meeting the needs of the people in the Edmonds area. As for other fields, there's no research yet that shows that crumb rubber is at all harmful. Crumb rubber is the standard for virtually every artificial turf field in western Washington, including all the pro fields. So even if we did change some of our fields to non-crumb rubber, our students play as much on other district fields as they play in our field. So right now, I still support using crumb rubber because of the additional expense of organic, but if organic alternatives ever become cost competitive with crumb rubber, it would certainly go for me.
Okay, we'll go to Ms. Kale now. Fred?
Yes, thank you. I agree with Ms. Graves that the research is, we're still waiting for the research to find out what the effects are on children. It makes sense for us to not install any more crumb rubber fields in our schools until we can be sure of the safety of it, but also at this point to not remove any that are already there. The point is also well taken that Mr. Noble makes, that our students are playing on other fields half of their time where there might be crumb rubber. And I would hope that as soon as we have research that clearly tells us whether it is dangerous or not, that then as a state, the state legislature would change requirements for sports fields and also have the funding to pay for removal if that is necessary.
Thank you very much. Okay, here's another question from the audience. What can you do to ensure that our school district is not a revolving door for teachers? Right now, Mukilteo School District is paying teachers over $60,000 a year and some seniors over $124,000. What's lacking in our district? And if my notes are correct, we start with Ms. Kale.
I think some of the issues with the budget that we had this year brought to light the fears of having a revolving door for our teachers. And we had lots of teachers who were testifying at that epic, long board meeting that went until almost midnight about not being able to make plans for their life because they don't know how stable their jobs are. If we are going to have constant instability in our budget, then we need to take that into account with our hiring practices as well. Hopefully, now that McCleary has passed and we are supposed to be fully funded by the state, that we won't have any more huge surprises at the end of our year when it comes for our fiscal plan for the following year, and we'll be able to assure teachers that they'll be able to accept a job here and keep that job. But until we know for sure exactly how our funding is going to go for several years in the future, this remains a risk.
Thank you. Ms. Graves.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think, one, we need to make sure that teachers can afford to live in the districts that they serve in. The recent layoffs impacted teachers who didn't have the seniority. They're my peers. One of my friends was one of the teachers who was impacted by the layoffs. And I think, technically a millennial, we're dealing with the high cost of living. We're dealing with long commute times. The student loan, the high student loan, 64% of the teachers in Edmonds have a master's degree. I'm betting they have student loans they're trying to pay off. We need to make sure that teachers have a livable salary for the region that we live in. One thing that I learned, I'm going to credit Nancy Cadams with this because she actually did the research and shared it with me. She knows her stuff. But we're losing about $4 million a year because of our regionalization calculation was based on teacher salaries. When they did that calculation, we have a lower calculation than the surrounding districts. So we actually get less money from the state because of that, and that was based on the lower salaries our teachers got. We could have more money right now. We've been paying them a fair wage from the start. And I think that's one example of how what we're doing currently is going to influence what happens in the future.
Thank you. Mr. Noble?
Well, first of all, I want to put the whole thing in perspective. We have 1,500 teachers in our district, and we actually released the equivalent of 14.5 teachers. And within a week, we recalled 2.5 of them. So in the end, we have released the equivalent of 11.9 teachers out of 1,500. So it was not a large layoff, but any layoff is bad. Any layoff is bad. She's right about the regionalization factor. We do not get as much to pay our teachers as all the districts around the shoreline of Ohio never give more pay to teachers than we do. Yet we have to provide better salaries because we hire teachers in the same pool as everyone from Ohio and shoreline do. That makes it a little more difficult for our budgets, but it's the fact like the way the state has funded us, and we have to live within our state funding. So that's the bottom line of it, but now the state funding will be more stable over the next few years. I'm confident that they will not be reduced.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'm going to follow up with one other question that it was the subject of numerous questions here, and you've all, I think, most of you anyway, have addressed this in some way, but I just wanted to acknowledge it came up in the audience, and that is the incredible frustration and angst related to the Meadowdale drama teacher who was laid off and the students who were affected by that. And do any of you want to add anything to that discussion? Again, some of you addressed it, but maybe we'll go ahead and start with Mr. Noble, since you have been on the board for the longest amount of time, in terms of what your feelings are about that situation.
It was such a difficult situation. The particular course that was taken away was a technology course in sound and lighting, and that was funded by our career technical education funding. That, from what I understand, only about 18 students signed up for the course, which was not enough to fund the course. And so without the course funded, and the fact that the CTE funding went to other courses that had a full student population, the teacher was informed that that course was not going to happen next year, and she did not have all the endorsements, because at the secondary level, you have to have an endorsement in every subject matter you teach. She was a junior teacher and did not have endorsements that fit other openings in the district. So it was a very unfortunate situation, and I wish that we could have found a way to retain.
Okay, Ms. Camp?
The first board meeting that I went to was April 24th, which was also the first day that the Meadowdale students started advocating for their teacher. They are one of the reasons why I'm here running for board. They have been inspiring in their dedication and attending every single board meeting since then. And as a mother of pre-performing arts students and as a performer myself, it is heartbreaking to have them lose their drama teacher. Drama saved me in high school, band saved me in college, and we need to do better by our students and make sure that we are funding non-academic classes for them, because not every child is going to be an academic superstar, but that doesn't mean that every child is not going to be a star in something. And by giving them options in which to express their creativity, their talents, themselves, then we are giving them a road to success in life. And so I thank the students for their dedication, and if I'm elected board, I will do my best to make sure that we are keeping our teachers that inspire our students so much.
Thank you, Ms. Grace.
I've been really inspired by the students that have come to the recent board meetings to advocate for their teacher. When I was 16, I wasn't going to school board meetings, holding signs in big groups of people. I think that speaks to what an amazing teacher she is. And I think, just to circle back to the importance of making decisions and having stakeholder input, these students are coming to every board meeting and holding up signs in big groups talking about how this teacher changed their life. If there's anything we can do to save her job, I think we should do it. But more importantly, these cuts should have been avoided at all costs. If there was any way to mitigate having the layoff teachers, I think we should have improved the process around that discussion, so this didn't have to happen in the first place. I think circling back to that is important. When I was in high school, I was a choir nerd, and I loved choir, and I went on to get a music scholarship when I started college. It was life-changing for me, and I know how important the arts are for students. I think retaining the teachers we have is an important first step for making sure that those programs last.
Thank you very much. All right, we are now ready for closing statements, and Ms. Grace, we'll start with you. 2 minutes.
All right. Gosh, I have my notes back here. Where are they? All right, I am a young parent in the district, and I'm passionate about education, but I also think I represent a perspective that's not currently represented on the board. I have 3 kids in a public school in our district. I think it's important that we have someone that understands what parents of this generation are facing. Like I said, we have high cost of living, we have long commute times, we have all these barriers. It's hard for me to make it to a board meeting on time sometimes just because of my commute. And I know I'm not alone in that. If there's a way to make our decisions and our process more accessible to parents, I think we should do it. I think more transparency, more input from parents and students, and really having someone on the board to represent that perspective is crucial. And I hope that if I was elected, I could be a good representative of that. And make sure that we're inviting the voices that aren't represented on our board too, because there's more than just me, but that's just an important part of why I'm running, because I think that perspective is missing right now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Noble.
Although this has been a challenging year with a reduction in our local levy, I think we should step back and take a look at the great school district we really have. We're a wonderfully diverse district with over 100 languages spoken. Although we are more diverse than state averages, the Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction Statistics show that we have more ninth grade students on track to graduate, higher English language growth, higher math growth than state averages. More of our teachers have master's degrees, and their average year's experience exceeds state averages. Although we inherited many schools that were quickly and cheaply built in the 70s, we're well on our way to replacing them with state-of-the-art schools designed for the 21st century learning. We've addressed technological inequities of our low-income students and students of color by providing Chromebook computers to every student above first grade. Edmonds School District is an outstanding district and one you should be proud of. If you have any interest, I urge you to become more involved in our schools. Volunteer, attend school board meetings, volunteer to be on district committees. Visit your local school and inquire what volunteer opportunities may be there. Even being a lunchtime buddy for someone can make a huge difference for a student. My phone number is on my brochure in the back, and if you have any questions or concerns about our district, whether it has to do with the election or not, please call me. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you very much for attending the forum, and I appreciate your support. Thank you.
Ms. Kale?
Back when I was getting my master's degree in English, everybody kept asking me, oh, are you going to be a teacher? I'm like, no, that wasn't really in my plans to be a teacher. And yet, once my oldest was in first grade, I ended up as a parent educator at Edmonds Heights. Being a parent educator, I feel has opened my eyes in more ways than the average parent has to how education is done, how children grow, how brain development works. And I feel like I would bring all of these skills to our school board if I were elected. I know exactly what it's like to see your child fail and not be able to help them, which gives me empathy in trying to make sure that no other child has to fail or has to fail continuously before they can get the help that they need. As a supporter of the arts my entire life, I'd like to bring that passion to make sure that we maintain our arts programs in our schools and make sure to inspire the next generation of performers or just creative thinkers who, when they come home after a long day of computer programming, will more appreciate the piano that they can sit and play in their living room. I have a vested interest. My youngest is 6 years old. I have a vested interest for a very long time in Edmonds School District. So I've got about 10 more years, 11 more years of children here in the school that I'd really like to make sure that I'm helping Edmonds help all of our children to be the best that they can. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that concludes the position 3 candidates, and so we're going to ask them to...
I'm running for position 5 in the school board. I'm running because I know I can help the school district navigate the rough financial waters we'll be experiencing for the next few years. I'm a natural collaborative leader, having served as a member and president of Lynnwood Library and on the board and president of the Foundation for Edmonds School District. I believe in allowing teachers the freedom to make creative choices in their own classroom, and I believe in serving every student regardless of where they've come from and helping them achieve success. I'm a strong advocate for vocational education and giving students the alternative career paths because college isn't the right fit for everyone. We are in the midst of revolution in the job market. We need to be more creative in how we prepare our students for the new career pathways. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go next to Lisa Honeywell. Did I pronounce that right? I didn't ask you ahead of time. Honeywell, just like Honeywell.
I think there's a Y there.
Thank you.
I'm Lisa Honeywell, and I'm glad to have you all here tonight. I'm pleased to be a part of this wonderful opportunity to share with you my ideas. I'm a product of the public school system, having grown up in the Highline Public School District down here in. I have a Bachelor of Arts from Dartmouth College that I got in 1988. I'm a mother of 3, and all 3 of those kids have gone through the Edmonds School District, and I have my last as a senior at Meadowdale High School. I've been married for 30 years, and I felt like now is the time, because my kids have recently been in the Edmonds School District, and still are. I've worked in education and training in the business world since graduation from college. I've designed educational programs for trade associations. I've worked with youth both at Trinity Lutheran Church and First Lutheran Richmond Beach. And for the PUD and Snohomish County PUD for the last 12 years, I've been involved in change management and training. So I have experience with public agencies and elected officials. My most recent experience on the 2020 Facilities and Bond Committee has given me a lot of experience that I'd like to share, and I feel like it can make a difference.
Thank you. Nancy Cadams is next. You have 1 minute.
Thanks, Teresa. I'm Nancy Cadams. I've devoted my entire professional career to trying to improve learning opportunities for all students, no matter their background. I've worked in the areas of early childhood education, special education, math and science education, research and evaluation, and more. Most recently, I spent about 20 years working in the Edmonds School District as a program director in the Student Learning Department. I have a PhD in educational psychology from Northwestern University. In that program, I learned how to ask good questions. I learned how to analyze complex issues, and I learned how to find credible evidence to help inform decisions. I'm the mother of 3. I'm the mother of 2. I have a new, about-to-be daughter-in-law, so she's my 3rd. I just used up all my time. I've been a band mom, a sports mom, a theater mom, the mom of an LGBTQ student. I've seen what it feels like when one of my children is not getting their learning needs met. And I've seen the amazing pride and joy when they achieve success in school and in life. I want that for all parents and all kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Rena Redrup, and I hope I got that right.
Yes.
Thank you.
My name is Dr. Rena Redrup. I'm part Hawaiian. I'm here to make informed decisions where your voice matters. My background extends from 10 years of teaching to 5 years on the Parent Resource Group at Meadowdale High School. I plan to use my experience as well as my roots as a nurse and a mother of 3 to bring positive change to our district. My primary goal is to foster an environment where all students can reach their full potential, and I know that including our community on important decisions will be the first step in this direction. As a member of the school board, I will manage our district budget to prioritize teachers and programs. I will work to build an inclusive and diverse curriculum that meets the needs of all students, and I will open the door to vocational program options so that every student has a path beyond high school.
Thank you. All right, and you all have the great advantage of hearing everybody else's questions, and you had a chance to think about it. I guess that's the good side of being in position 5. All right, question one. We'll start with a question about school district funding. As a school board director, how would you address the concern that no matter how many levies voters approve, there never seems to be enough money to meet the district's needs? Put another way, how can voters be assured their money is being spent wisely? And we'll start with Ms. Honeywell. You have 1 minute.
So I think first and foremost, I would want to work towards transparency of the budget so that parents and educators are aware of how we're spending the money. And I would certainly look for ways where we could be cost effective where we're not. But I think more importantly, I would probably look to the legislature to work with them to deal with specific issues like our salary allocation model, which does hurt us at the district because we have so much experienced staff and because of the base salary that's now we're being paid at the base salary, rather than at maybe more experience that allows for that experienced staff that we have. So I'd like to work towards changing that so the salary allocation model will support us better. I also would like to deal with the reduction in levy that we're facing, and so how we are now not able to collect the same amount that we were able to collect in our levy, and deal with the regionalization issue that came up with the District 3 folks. And then also, but at the same time, work to rebuild some of our reserves that we have spent in the recent past.
Thank you. Ms. Cadence?
I think when we think about the budget, we have to think about both internal and external factors that affect it. So when we think about the budget, thinking about internal factors, we have to make sure we make very reasonable and smart assumptions about the budget. And that's including about enrollment projections and about the fund balance, which were two areas that I feel that the board did not make good assumptions in the current budget situation. We need to think about all the factors that are going to affect the district budget both now and in the future. In terms of external factors, we have to think about advocating with Olympia and our state legislators there. As has been mentioned, the current state funding legislation has a number of pieces to it that hamper us, and one in particular that hampers Edmonds more than the others, and that's the regionalization factor. I think it's very important that we advocate to make sure that the funding is equitable and that the places like the local levies there are changes made in the state legislation to give us more flexibility in how we can use our money. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Redbrook?
The funding of teachers and classrooms and programs should be paramount in what the district chooses to spend their money on. Above that, at the district level, things can be cut and reduced that won't affect the students. There are teachers that are on special assignment at the district level that were allowed to continue their special assignment. They could have taken a year off or 2 years off until the budget stabilized and be infused back into meeting the needs of the classroom and of class size without disrupting programs. There was also a glimpse that this was going to be an issue in the fall, and the district still went forward with doing Blueprint 2025. Also, they decided to approve a new science curriculum that could have also been put off. So those are all things that we need to look at.
Thank you. Mr. Alve?
Yeah, as far as the budget goes, in 2 years, it's by a 2-year budget, so in 2 years we'll have a better stabilized assessment or understanding of what the new criteria is from the state. So we'll have we'll be in a better position in 2 years. This is a temporary chaos. One factor, though, that I just found out about is with the new financing from the state, it forced us to go onto the state plan for benefits. Before, we had our own plan, and a 0.25 FTE teacher was given 0.25 worth of benefits, but now that we're on the state plan, that 0.25 teacher is now being fully financed with their benefits, which is costing us a significant amount of money.
Thank you. Question 2, name your top 3 priorities, or however many you'd like to, up to 3, for the coming school year if you are elected to the school board, and we will start with Ms. Katos.
My first priority is encouraging the district to develop measurable student-centered goals. To any of you who work in an organization, it's probably shocking to know that the district does not have measurable goals. They have some statements like effective learning for all students, and we have no way of knowing if that's being met, what progress is being made, and you have to have goals in order to allocate your resources effectively, know if you're using them, know if they're meeting the goals or not, and hold the district accountable. My second top priority is equity. I've talked to students, parents, teachers, administrators, and it's clear that some of our students are not receiving the same services and opportunities in some of our schools as those in other schools, and that's not acceptable. My third priority is communication, and you heard that with the former group of candidates. The district has a shared decision-making process that's not being used consistently. Communication is not transparent. There have been decisions made that have been unknown to everybody, and they need to improve communication to the community and to parents. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Redruth?
My primary goal is to foster an environment where all students can reach their full potential, and I know that including our community in important decisions will be the first step in this direction. I will work to have an open mind and an open ear to our diverse community to make sure that everybody is a player and is involved and is part of the process in making this happen. I will also help to establish connections through trade and partnership programs and apprenticeship programs, I will also advocate for a win-win of zero college credit fees for students earning college credits in our high school classrooms. I will work to build an inclusive and diverse curriculum that meets the needs of all students.
Thank you. Mr. Abe?
I'm a passionate advocate for vocational education, so I would like to work with Mark Anderson in the career in technical education, or what's it called now? Career in college readiness.
Career in
It's new name now. Okay. To work with him on making sure that the kids have open access and a lot of information about his programs. And then also I'd like to work with the communications department to help them define their process.
Thank you. Ms. Honeywell?
So my experience on the Facilities Bond Committee gave me the opportunity to see every elementary school and every middle school in our district and make recommendations for the 2020 bond. And for me then, number one priority is passing the levy so that we can build 2 middle schools and deal with our overcrowding in our elementary schools. Because by going to a 6th to 8th model, as every other district around us already is, we can alleviate the crowding that we have in every one of our elementary schools. So number one would be passing the levy. Number two would be working with our homeless students and helping them provide pathways for their success. I know that we have several hundred students that are daily sleeping in different places, and we're picking them up from our buses, picking them up in different locations. I want to make sure to support them to have them achieve success in our school. And then thirdly, I would like to look at a close look at the budget and see where we can find money to do the programs that we need and to increase our equity across the district.
Thank you very much. We're on to the next question, which is, recent school district decisions have taken parents by surprise, such as the board vote to implement right at school before and after school care at schools. Name 3 steps you would take as a board member to better engage and empower citizens in the process of school board decision making, and we will start with Ms. Redruth.
Well, it's wonderful that we have online communication now, because communication should be made easier, not harder. It doesn't cost money to make copies and send things out. So each school has a weekly newsletter, and all of the board's agendas and upcoming big decisions should be outlined on a weekly basis to all parents. In addition, it should also be outlined on all of the local newspapers, like the My Edmonds News series, and any way that it can be put out there and have an avenue for feedback at each step of the way that it's outlined, that we're going to be gathering information, we're going to be having meetings, we're going to be having input, and then the steps we're going to take to make those decisions. I just want to say that I thought that the Boys and Girls Club was a very fine institution that I don't think the process went well with the right at school. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Abe. You have 1 minute.
I echo the disappointment about the Boys and Girls Club losing abruptly their partnership without giving them an opportunity to counterbid or to work with the district on another solution, another path forward. The district made that particular decision seemingly hastily, where some parents had already pre-registered their kids for the YMCA programs or the Boys and Girls Club program for next year, and then abruptly are now set with a new program. So I echo all the sentiment about having better communication with the parents of the district, and then also with the community, because the community is very engaged, especially down in Edmonds.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Honeywell?
So I'll just broaden the question and raise it up a little higher and just speak to just in general, customer and employee engagement with families and staff at the district. I do think that engagement is a two-way street, and it's important for parents to be involved just as much as it is the district to communicate. So what I would say is, as a board member, I would focus on posting agendas and making sure the key decisions are out and where for input. And what that would mean to me and how I've done it with at the PUD, I'm involved in customer research. We do surveys. We ask our customers what they want and what their thoughts are on a specific issue. So I would work to conduct surveys, I would work to conduct focus groups, and I would certainly work to offer public meetings so that the input could be provided by those key people involved, such as parents and families and educators, so that we could make the best decision in the time that we have.
Thank you very much. Ms. Cadence?
So one of the things I mentioned is one of my top priorities is communication, and specifically to have a better use, a more consistent use of the district shared decision-making process. That's a process that basically says for any important decision, the district must get input from whoever the impacted stakeholders are, be they parents, teachers, students, the community. So one thing I would do would be to push to have that being used much more consistently. In addition to that, I think it's important that we do outreach beyond online surveys, beyond social media, to reach the parents who may not have access to the internet, to go to where they are, either to schools for parent meetings, to community organizations, to places of worship, to homes of community leaders, particularly perhaps the communities of color. And another step that I would take along those lines is to consider the reformulation of the CPC, the Citizens Planning Committee. That was a committee that had a representative from each school regularly come, hear about what was going on, go back, take the input to their school, and bring the input back. And if you do that, you make sure that every school is finding out what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question, how would you work with district staff to encourage and promote fairness and equity for all of the district's students? And we start with Mr. Abe.
I've done a tremendous amount of work with helping out communities of need through my work with the Schools Foundation and with Rotary. I was a major advocate for the creation of Nourishing Network, which is a weekend meal program, which has then become a summer meal program, pop-up pantry program, holiday and emergency program, and has spawned Whole Families, Whole Communities, which is a wraparound emergency service for homeless and people on the verge of being homeless. I would continue Diana White's work and work with Justin Irish and Kimberly Armstrong to continue that path forward. But along with the Nourishing Network, the Schools Foundation and also Rotary give scholarships, hundreds of thousands of dollars of scholarships to kids of all stripes in the district. The Schools Foundation does PSAT funding, among many, many other programs. There you go.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Honeywell?
So I would work to encourage the district to recruit and hire teachers of color, recruit and hire counselors and administrators of color. I would work to foster programs and assemblies that teach respect and inclusion in our classrooms and in our schools. And I would work to provide scholarship funds for all activities, to provide equal access for all programs for all students. And in addition, I would look to partner with other schools that are successful and learn from them so that we can replicate those same model programs in our schools.
Thank you very much. Ms. Kato?
So again, equity is one of my main issues in my campaign. I have talked to a number of people, and while the district over the last several years has spent a great deal of time and resources giving training on culturally responsive practices to the administrators in the district, they have not been giving that training to those who work directly with kids, the teachers, the paraeducators, the counselors, etc. I would work with the district to make sure that that kind of training in culturally responsive practices gets down to the people who interact with the kids on a daily basis. In addition to that, I think every school in their school improvement plan should have a goal to have a climate that's inclusive and welcoming, and do a regular monitoring of the students to make sure that they all feel welcome, that they all feel safe, and that they all feel like they're getting the kinds of equitable services that are due to them, and that where there are gaps, that the district works with those schools to provide the training and resources necessary so that is not occurring. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Redruth?
I will work to build an inclusive and diverse curriculum that meets the needs of all students. So this is in literature, history, and sex education, so that children see themselves in what they are being taught and by who teaches them, and that they feel like they belong to our community and we are all part of our society together. And the issue with understanding needs and dealing with people who are facing poverty and homelessness is it has a very deep impact. So it's important to really understand that if you are trying to have your child do a program and you have to walk to the school and say, I need to have this funding paid for my student, that is a barrier right there, that they're being asked to ask for that. So we want to remove those barriers and encourage people to feel like they can be involved by reducing those fees to students to be involved in all the programs and not feel like they have to ask for those fees to be waived.
Thank you very much. I'm going to combine a couple of questions that were asked by people here in the audience, and we got to them in a sort of different way, but it's okay because you're a different group of people. We'll get there. And it is related to some of this topic related to equity. And the one question that was submitted has to do with the district's choice programs, which have been criticized for their comparative lack of equitable access for all families. You have concerns or strategies you would like to share, and if you so desire in that 1 minute long period you have to also touch on the earlier question we had about sports versus arts, you may, or if you feel like you don't have time, we can get to it later, but I will, with that very muddled explanation, I will start with, let's see, where am I here? We'll start with choice. Yes. Yeah, so choice programs, honestly, I'm assuming that would be maybe like a Maplewood or Madrona, that kind of thing. Am I on track with whoever asked that question? Right? Okay. Yes, I will. I think. The district's choice programs have been criticized for their comparative lack of equitable access for all families. How do you have concerns or strategies you would like to share to address that? And we will start with Samuel.
Also, interesting that would be connected to Madrona and Maplewood, because my children actually did go to Madrona. I have 3 kids, and they went to Madrona K through 6. They switched to Meadowville Middle and Meadowville High School. We do feel very fortunate that my kids were selected from the lottery to attend. They were bused from their regular school, so I'm not certain that I fully understand the lack of equity there. I think if kids put their name on the list, We were fortunate and lucky to be able to be selected, but I do feel that every child can put their name on the list and be considered. And because they are bused from their home school, I do feel like that does afford the opportunity potentially. But in speaking to the music and sports issue, I would say that it's important that we really look at funding for kids for music and for drama. It's an important part of our curriculum that we continue to fund that. We do fund PE, and then similarly that would be, so when music becomes a barrier because of instruments or fees, we need to make sure that we provide those for students of all who need or are interested.
Okay, and can I just, I'm not sure who asked that question, but I also think I might have missed the boat. Were we also perhaps talking about things like International Baccalaureate and those kinds of programs? Or were we on the right track with the, does anybody want to add any input or shake your head yes or no? Are we okay with that direction? Because there's a lot of different ways it could go. All right, I guess maybe that person left, I don't know. We will move on to that same question. If you need me to repeat it, let me know. Let's see, where did we start here? Ms. Cadams.
So it's true that the choice rules, which are Maplewood and Madrona, are done by a lottery. But when you look at the population of kids who go there are very few low-income students who are enrolled there. So the question is why? Is it a matter of communication? Do the parents not know about it? In which case we need to improve that. Perhaps we should think about, I don't want to be technical, but a stratified sample where the lottery is set up so that a certain percentage must be from low-income homes in order to ensure that that happens. I realize that Maplewood has a requirement for parents to be involved. So for some low-income parents, that may be difficult in terms of having to work or transportation for them. But I think looking closer at that, because it does seem like an area of inequity. In terms of the sports, arts, I'd like to round that out more to all kinds of optional programs, and the fact that those need to be available to all kids at all schools. And if they're not, we need to think about how to do that. And one thing may be an HR question, which I'll get to maybe when we get to the HR part, to be able to expand more, so that we don't do things like lose the drama teacher at Everdale High, which might be really disturbing that program, and it shouldn't be. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Redra?
The issue with equity with the special schools and programs is that not everybody can get into the program. It should really be that anybody who wants to have an alternative program has an option of being an alternative program, and that we should be expanding those programs if more students want to be there. The other issue with equity with that is that if you have students that want to participate in after-school activities and you have working families, that is not available to those students because there's no situation where they can stay at the school after school to do those activities unless they have a ride home. So if you have parents that are working, then those kids have to take the bus back to their parents' school and go to the daycare at the parents' school. So it becomes a choice then for these families. Do we want to do the special program, but then our kids don't get to do that extracurricular activities, or it's a balancing act, so that's the inequity. I'd like to also address the music and sports, but I don't know, you were waving your arm tonight. Okay,
If
so
you-
can I address it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
We'll have another round if people want to weigh in on that. So
Okay.
we'll go next to Mr. Arling.
Yeah, well, I'd like to go straight to the arts and sports and drama. Being on the 3 different organizations that I'm on, I'm well aware of the amount of money that's available for district to tap into. So if I were on the school board or otherwise involved, I would encourage the school district to seek that funding from any number of sources. Hazel Miller, we could have saved the drama teacher's job if only we sought resources in our own community. So that's how I would collaboratively address the inequity issue, is lean on our community.
Thank you very much. Okay, so Ms. Redrup, did you want to briefly address the sports and arts issue? I think the rest of you did touch on it in some way, so you're the only one left.
Okay. I value arts and music and drama as well as sports. I think that all students need to have outlets for their expression outside of academia, whether it be on any of those venues. I understand from our prior set of school board candidates that they were stating that sports isn't part of the school mandatory funding, but it should be at least that we're focusing on improving physical education and fitness in our students, because it's proven that people who are of greater fitness and health will also do better academically. So it's part of building a well-rounded student. Furthermore, there's teamwork that exists in all of those areas, and we want to address each child's strength and what's passionate to them. So we need to have all of those available and funded.
Thank you. All right, we're on to the next question, which is, this is the one that you all heard earlier. It's a long one, but bear with me. According to the National Institute of Health, 1 in 5 people struggle with dyslexia. Parents of dyslexic students in the district are paying thousands of dollars to get private diagnosis, dyslexia-specific tutoring, even educational advocates to help them navigate the special education process. A new bill in the legislature requires that by 2021, all districts screen for kindergarten and second grade students for dyslexia and provide interventions. What is your plan to support these families and train teachers for these new screenings and dyslexia-specific interventions for those students? And we will start with Mr. Abe.
My son, who's 3 at the time, I took him to the Alderwood Early Learning Center to be tested for speech with a speech pathologist. And I was very impressed with their, I was unimpressed with the facility. I was very impressed with their, the counselors there that walked us through it. I would suspect, if we don't already, I would love to encourage our district to fund the similar resources for dyslexia and other special needs like that. I'm surprised we don't fund it already.
Thank you. Ms. Honeywell?
So I think it would be important first to train our staff to be aware and to look for signs and issues so that we can draw attention to those children that do need to have immediate testing. And then in hearing from the panel beforehand, I think it's important that our testing, that we set requirements, that our testing takes place within a certain period of time so that those we can address those issues quickly. And I do believe that it needs to be funded, whether if it's not fully funded by the state or federal dollars, that we do need to provide that through our school district. And so we would need to look for ways to be able to fund that. Because again, loss of time for the student at an early age is not good in the long run. So we do really want to catch that early.
Thank you. Ms. Cadence?
So this is a very complex and difficult issue. It is difficult to identify children as young as kindergarten or those entering kindergarten as being dyslexic. There's a lot of developmental differences that are going on. That being said, I think it's important that teachers work in conjunction with psychologists and counselors. The district used to have, I don't know if they still do, a process called the multi-tiered instruction process, where teachers were doing regular screenings on their students as part of the ongoing classroom instruction, and would regularly meet together in grade level groups and with learning support teachers and other specialists to see were those students' needs being met, for those who needs were not being met, to move them to another level of intervention. I would, on the board, ask those hard questions about what's being done now and what could we do. It's not up to the school board to make those screenings or make those decisions, but just oversee the process and make sure that it seems to be fitting the appropriate needs of students and the research that's out there on the topic. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Redruth?
As a kindergarten teacher for 10 years, I often had parents asking me why their children were writing backwards, and children's eyes don't fully develop in terms of flipping letters till at different ages they can develop. So without I don't want to skip addressing this, but I want to just say that children need to have a chance to explore and develop a curiosity about the world, and they need to be given the tools to discover more about what interests them instead of being pressured into learning basic skills earlier. So at the point that they are ready to be evaluated to see if they are dyslexic will be closer to about the age of 8. And then, but earlier on, we can have interventions like reading specialists and reading recovery to give students experiential situations with print without putting them under the pressure of being tested and being given a stigma that they are somehow not in line with where they should be in order to develop a positive self-concept, that's something that's important for us to be looking at.
Thank you very much. Okay, next question. What can you do to ensure that our school district is not a revolving door for teachers? Right now, Mukilteo School District is paying teachers over $60,000 a year, and some seniors over $124,000. What's lacking in our district? And we start with Ms. Redrow. Unless I got out of order, you're looking at me funny. Did I do that again?
No, I was just...
No, I meant him.
Well, I just went first.
Right.
Last one.
Right, and we're kind of rotating around from, so if I got
You're in
it.
charge.
Scary. Okay, we'll mix it up. What the heck? Let's go. You already started, let's go, Rita.
We need to pay our teachers the salaries that they can remain in our community. We want to be able to go to the store and see our teachers at the store and feel like they belong with us. So we need to pay teachers. Now, Mukilteo looked at their budget differently. I think that the Edmonds School District did a worst case scenario decision in terms of making those cuts, which I don't agree with. I think that there are certain things that they can do to raise the numbers of the funding for the classrooms. So one of the ideas that I mentioned is one of my 3 ideas with having it be that students who are taking college classes in the high school have 0 fees would draw more students to our schools instead of them going to Running Start, and therefore those students would increase the funding for the district. So I think a lot of families are making a very financial decision about where their kids are going to be taking their college credits. And so we need to be looking at more things like that to keep the funding in our schools and to be able to pay for what we need for our students.
Thank you. Mr. Ahmed, you're on.
A couple years ago, the district renegotiated their agreement with the teacher union, and they got a significant raise. I'm unaware of where our base is now, but back then it was significant compared to our neighboring schools, or so I heard. As far as paying a livable wage, that's absolutely ideal, but it is very expensive to live in Edmonds, right? But I mean, ideally, yeah, we would pay more. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Honeywell?
So at this point, I'm not prepared to make a decision knowing why teachers leave. So what I would do first is I would do some data collection. I would talk to teachers and ask them why they might be leaving. I would work on exit interviews from the teachers who are leaving, try to understand what is it. I think we may be making an assumption that it's about money. There could be other barriers that are causing them to leave. There could be other dissatisfying moments in their day. And so I would work to fix those issues, and it may include money. And I would also talk with other school districts that are successfully achieving low attrition and see what they're doing that we may not be doing.
Thank you. Ms. Kadens?
So Lisa, I agree with you. I think having exit interviews is a good idea. Rather than focusing on the budget is the reason why teachers are leaving, I want to think about the climate. When I came to the school district and joined the staff in 1999, we were still not, I think we're paying our teachers now a fair salary, but at that time we were not. But we were attracting teachers, and we were attracting teachers because of the climate in Edmonds. There was the Edmonds way. It had to do with communication and the shared decision-making process. It included teachers and staff in all important decisions. It had a climate of inclusiveness. There were goals, there was direction, there was focus, everybody was working together, there was professional development for teachers that was well constructed and helping them get the kinds of new techniques in teaching and learning that they could embed with their own instructional strategies. There were a lot of things attracting teachers to the district 20 years ago that are not there now because, as I've said, we don't have goals, we don't have direction, we don't have focus. We have to think beyond the money because teachers, while money is nice, they also want a lot else in the climate of where they work. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, here's another question from the audience. Do we need more cops or more counselors on our campuses? And explain your answer. And Ms. Cadams, let's start with you.
Well, we need more counselors, obviously. But I want to think about I was just talking about climate for teachers. I want to talk about climate for kids. So when we think about helping the mental health of students and their social emotional well-being, a lot of that has to do with their feeling safe, particularly students in marginalized groups. And I think it's really important that we do an annual student survey of kids at least grades 4 and up and determine, are there kids in certain groups who are not feeling safe, who feel like they're being bullied, who do not feel like they're being included, they don't feel welcome. Any of those things that make students feel marginalized, I think, are the things that counselors work with kids on, but everybody in the school needs to be working on it. The school needs to identify which kids might be having those kinds of difficulties and come up with a school plan to address that. And the district needs to help provide training and resources to any school where there are those kind of gaps, because we're all in it. It takes a village.
Thank you. Ms. Redruth?
Our schools do need more counselors. I also think that we really need to be thinking about how we interact with our community and having peer counselors, looking to successes that exist in the schools, such as Meadowdale High School has a successful LINK program where teachers work with upperclassmen to help freshmen, and those freshmen maintain that relationship with the upperclassmen throughout the year. I don't agree with a survey as such because people have to feel like they belong and that their responses will be valued. So I feel like that is a premature step before people feel like their voice matters. So I think that there's other steps that we can take before we get to that point where we feel like, okay, if we do a survey, are we going to get more than just a fraction of the population that is responding to the survey? So I know I have a lot of ideas, but it's basically that every student would have a mentor and would have a connection with somebody in the community so that nobody falls through the cracks.
Thank you. Mr. Albe?
Yeah, my work with the Nursing Network, I was shocked to find out that we don't have a real good handle on the realities of the kids in our district as far as their living circumstances. There's an ever-growing number of homeless kids or kids in need year to year. When we started the Nursing Network 5 years ago or thereabouts, there was 150 kids on the roster. Now it's 650 or thereabouts. It's a significant increase every single year. I'm wondering how our district can. We don't know where our kids go at night. How do we know what their life is, their evening or their lives are? How do we know if they're experiencing trauma? Or how are we reporting it? How are we keeping track of that type of thing? So I'd like to work with the district on assessing those needs better.
Thank you. Ms. Honeywell?
So I would suggest we need more counselors. I unfortunately know too many high school kids from good families, from not necessarily single mom families or broken families, strong families that are dealing with anxiety, they're dealing with self-harm, and feeling lack of inclusion. And I can only imagine then the other families too that may have a broken family and how difficult it is, and that they wake up every morning feeling like they don't want to go to school. And I would suggest that we need more counselors to help those kids work through those issues. And then also look at ourselves as the school district, as teachers and principals and administrators. What are we doing to create that environment? Are we creating unrealistic expectations? Are we putting too many tests on them, on standardized tests that they're pressured to do? Too much homework? What is it that we're doing that is causing, adding to their stress? And so as a result, I would definitely say more counselors.
Thank you. All right, let's go to the, I should mix these up a little bit in the order just to keep you on your toes. But let's go back to the crumb rubber infill question. The school board in past votes has addressed the issue of tire crumb rubber infill being used on school district playfields. Some parents have requested that alternative infields such as cork be used due to possible health and environmental safety impacts that are still under study. What is your position on this issue? Should the district continue to use tire crumb rubber? And boy, I hope I'm on track here. It looks like Ms. Honeywell starts.
So a few years ago, when that whole process was going through and we were looking at crumb rubber, my family was actively involved actually in attending the board meetings. We were strongly listening in, attending the meetings, listening to the scientists' presentations, and from what we could understand and hear, we heard that there wasn't any additional scientific evidence that proved that there was any more potential cancer-causing agents in the crumb rubber than we actually find in our own dirt with arsenic and the various other toxins that we have in our very own dirt. So as a result, I would suggest that we continue to look at studies, look for additional research, and if it does suggest to us that there's a cancer-causing agent that we need to avoid, then I would certainly do that. And as we find that there are better solutions for the same price or close to the same price, certainly we should look at using the best possible solution. But I do know that there is value in providing year-round sports for kids with crumb rubber. It does allow for actually a smoother surface. I know from my kids from playing baseball, and a better year-round experience without the puddles and all the mess.
Thank you, Ms. Katos.
I haven't read the hundreds and hundreds of pages that I know are out there on this topic. I've been approached at meetings by scientists who said there's an Italian study that shows that there is a relationship. I understand that for something like this to really know, you have to have the longitudinal research. My feeling is this. Because we don't know for sure if there's any chance at all that this could harm our students, I'm really not in favor of it. It sounds to me like it's a money issue, and I do understand that. Just because other districts have all done it doesn't mean it's the right thing, which is one of the things that was quoted, even though it is interesting to think about the fact that our students are playing on this on other places. I would want to look into the expense, not only the cost that Gary Noble had mentioned, but also the expense of removing this and the environmental impact of it as well, because there are other impacts that are financial impacts that we may not have thought about.
Thank you, Ms. Redrup.
I was asked to weigh on this a number of years ago when we were looking at the Meadowdale playfields, and as the president of the Meadowdale Parent Resource Group, I did research the background of the crumb rubber at that point. It was a number of years ago, and I looked at a lot of studies, and there was no measurable risk of using crumb rubber from what I read at that time, and so I expressed my support of the crumb rubber for the Meadowdale playfields. I know that there's always ongoing information, but at that point, with what the cost was going to be and the fact that it is recycled tires, so we actually are recycling what we've already used in our environment, that this was something that I support it, but I'd be happy to take a look at it again. But at this point, I don't have a different opinion on that.
Thank you very much. Mr. Abe?
I appreciate the research and the work that the school board went through years ago when this was the hot button issue. But with all things, all building materials, all surfaces, everything, we should continue to keep an eye on all the studies that come out, because obviously the health of our students is paramount. So if a study does come out that shows conclusively that it's more harmful than not, then we should definitely address it, like everything.
Okay, thank you very much. So like I did with the last group, given the passion in this room that was demonstrated through all the questions I got about the Meadowdale drama teacher, I'm going to give you each an opportunity if you want to weigh in on that issue in terms of your observations, your thoughts related to some of the budget decisions that were made, just to address what people are feeling about that. And Mr. Abe, I'll start with you.
Again, I'll reiterate my point earlier, which is I wish the school district did more, and the parents in Meadowdale that wanted to preserve her position did more in reaching out to community organizations. The money is there, and I have voted literally hundreds of times for giving grants, large and small, in various ways to many organizations, sports community, or youth sports, Jackets for Kids. I mean, we've done a lot. And this is a very good candidate for some amount of funding, and I can't imagine it not raising enough with passion.
Thank you. Ms. Honeywell?
Given the information that we were provided by Mr. Noble in the earlier presentation, I think that it's clear that what happened was that we did have not enough students in the drama program to facilitate that additional CTE class. In that case, I think what we have here is an unintended consequence. So sometimes numbers really work, and numbers help us to make decisions, and they determine maybe what we want to fund and not fund. But that might be fine when it's the 4th class of physics, because you're offering 3 instead of 4, because you don't have enough to run 4. It's different when it may be the only class. And I think in this case, this gives us an opportunity to look at how maybe our numbers don't work as well as they should. And the unintended consequence was we lost potentially an entire program. And so in that case, I would say we look at that and be creative and try to find ways to solve that so that we don't do that, whether it's drama, whether it's band, whether it might be environmental science, a one-off class.
Thank you very much. Ms. Cadams?
So my understanding is the Meadowdale High teacher, and it's a bargaining issue, it had to do with seniority. They did have enough for 1 class, not enough for 2. A grant could not save a teacher and get a teacher out of the seniority line. It's bargained with the union. That being said, I'd like to think about this in a larger human resources context. If I were on the school board, I would ask some hard questions about a number of our HR processes. One of them, I wonder in a case like this if it wouldn't be possible to negotiate, and again, it's a bargain negotiation, but something where a teacher who's a specialty teacher, would not go into the same lineup for seniority as a regular gen ed teacher, perhaps. I don't know. I think we can think more innovatively about our HR practices. I think in general, we don't do some of the practices that are nimble and flexible that other districts do to catch the best and the brightest early. I think our processes seem somewhat slow. I think we could rethink some of the traditional kinds of how we RIF teachers through seniority and take other factors into account, like those who teach special programs.
Thank you. Ms. Redbrook?
We need to look at that 300 students were affected by Ms. Powell's pink slip rather than just the 18. And I really appreciate Mr. Avi's offer to help fund her position. It makes me think of my first year teaching in Newton Public Schools in Massachusetts. I got pink slipped and I ended up deciding to move out west. So at the last day of school, the mayor of Newton pulled a rabbit out of his hat had and found the money for all the teachers to get hired back, but I was already moving out here. But maybe Mr. Avi could think about, or the Edmonds School District Foundation could think about ways that they could fill the gap for this year. If it's possible to hire back all of the teachers, then there wouldn't be an issue with a seniority, and maybe we would solve our problem. Just an idea. I'm all for great inspirational ideas, but that's what dawned on me when you were just talking right now about saving her. So I'll wrap it up since I run over that.
Okay, I guess the pressure's on you.
Yeah, I'm on the board, I don't control the board. but also, we did save a teacher for the house project a number of years ago with grant money, so I know it can be done. I don't know what the mechanics are behind it, but we did do it. So the same principle can be applied for any position, whatever it is. You just go find the money, and the district will take care of the rest.
Okay, we are now at the closing statements. So you have 2 minutes for a closing statement, and I'm going to start with Ms. Redrup.
Thank you for coming today. I asked for your votes, but I could make informed decisions where your voice matters. My goal is for our schools to have the necessary staffing programs and inclusive curriculum for all students to realize their potential. Too much instructional time is currently being spent teaching to the test, and those testing processes run contrary to improving student success. I wanted to share a little bit about why I left the teaching profession. When I first started teaching kindergarten, children got to choose where they wanted to play and what they wanted to learn, and they learned through their play. I had students who loved the block area, and one student just wanted to spend all his time building, and soon it became a zoo, and then soon it was something that we could write about and include a lot of the other students into that experience. And one day I was talking to him, and still his mom was saying to me, when is he going to start learning this alphabet? I said, well, we'll just expose him to everything. We're not going to pressure him. And one day I asked him what he was interested in doing today, and he said, I want to learn about building bridges. And I got a book for him on bridges, and then he wanted to learn the name of every single bridge. And I showed him the names of the bridges, and his love of learning took fire. And that's something that we need to return our kids to now, because the whole idea that we're just putting kids into the starting blocks like horses and just shooting the gun, and then they have to race as fast as they can to get to all these goals as fast as they can do, is ruining the development of creativity in our society. We're thinking that we need to race to go to where China is and Japan is in their achievement. Well, China and Japan are looking to us because we're the ones who've invented things. We're the ones who've invented the airplane. They want to steal the airplane from us. Do you think that we are going to have children who are inventing things if they're so stressed out that they pass the test? We need to also expand ways for students who are not college bound to pursue vocational and apprenticeships. And that is something that we need to value students. It's not, oh, you couldn't go to college, so now you're going to be in vocations. It needs to be that everybody is valued for their choices that they make. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll go on to Mr. Abe.
I believe our schools should be supporting all children. Every student deserves a great, thoroughly challenging education. I'd like to highlight 2 things about my service to the community. First, my work at the Foundation for Edmonds School District. Since joining the board in 2012, we have grown from raising about $45,000 annually to $1.4 million last year. I served as president of the board in 2015 and 16 and served on numerous committees. I'm a big proponent of the Foundation's Nursing Network and Full Family School Communities program, and I'm proud of the work I've done to help the Foundation grow to where it is today. The second is my membership with Lynnwood Library, where I've served as president and again co-president the last 2 years, and have co-chaired many community events and fundraisers. I've helped save the 45-year-old Lynnwood Library House project from being dissolved 6 years ago, because I truly believe in vocational education and its value to those students that don't have college in their life path. We've worked in collaboration with Mark Madison and other district staff in finding creative ways to revitalize the program by adding math credits and industry certification to the program. It has more students this past year than it has had in decades. I wouldn't be where I am today without vocational education. My father, a successful entrepreneur and business owner for 35 years, wouldn't be where he is without it either. It is important to set our students up for the next phase of their lives. Oftentimes, that does not include a four-year university. I can go on about what I've done for education while on the board, the foundation board, and as a member and leader of the Lynnwood Rotary, but I suspect my time is up. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Honeywell?
So I consider myself a lifelong learner. I always like to ask the question why, and I like to read to learn more. And that came to me, and I was inspired by my English teacher, Ken Myers, in my junior year at high school. And what I want to do is be a part of providing a similar experience for all children in our school district. I want to bring back the love of learning. I'm a collaborative leader, so I will seek to build partnerships with those who are doing things effectively, whether that's to help our homeless students or whether that's to partner with other schools to learn better about equity programs. I promise to do the work and come prepared to meetings. I may not know in advance an answer, but I promise to do that work, come prepared, and involve others to come to decision making. I'm a community engagement type of person. That means that I want to provide opportunities for input throughout the process so that we can make decisions together. And I want to build an environment in a school situation and buildings that are successful for our students. And that means building 2 new middle schools and alleviating the overcrowding, because that is what we need for an environment for success. We can't have paraeducators in closets with 1 or 2 children doing special support education. And I do believe in equity for all, and that means all. So I want to provide an opportunity for teachers of all color, administrators of all colors, so that our students can see, when they look in those faces and in those eyes of those teachers and administrators, they can see themselves. And so I looked for a quote that kind of summarized how I feel about this last night. And there's a Greek biographer who I've not ever heard of him, but his name is Plutarch. And this quote fits with what I feel. The mind is not a vessel to be filled, but a fire to be ignited. And I would like to ignite the fire in the students of Edmonds School District.
Thank you. Ms. Gata?
I love the Edmonds School District. I know and care about every single school in this district the way a teacher knows and cares about their students. The Washington State School Directors Association estimates that it takes the average new board member about 18 months to learn the work of the district. I'm not going to be the average new board member. Because of my work in the district, I know how systems work. I know how budgets are built. I know how to support teachers. I know how to communicate with the community. I know how to help keep students safe. Teachers and administrators know me. They talk to me. They trust me. They will tell me what's going on in the schools. I'm comfortable walking through the schools, visiting classrooms, talking to kids and teachers. Typically, staff are not comfortable talking directly to school board directors, and often they are discouraged to do so by district leaders. That won't be the case with me because they know me, they know I'm someone who will listen, who will follow up, and will do what I can to help. I want to point out that as a working group, the teachers, counselors, certificated support staff in the district know me about as well as anybody could know somebody, because I've worked there almost 20 years. The fact that that group, the Edmonds Education Association, endorsed me is a testament to the fact that they know I can do the work. I will do everything I can to help the heart and soul staff of the district and to serve all our students, no matter their background, to reach their full potential. and I am prepared on day one of being a school board director to hit the ground running and do what I can. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thanks again to the Lynnwood Library and Michael Delury for providing us with this great space for the forum. If you, again, want to watch it on YouTube or share it with your friends and neighbors, go to any one of our websites, Lynnwood Today, My Edmonds News, or MLT News. In the next couple of days, it'll be there for you to watch. And you probably have your primary ballots, so now you can make an informed choice. Again, thank you very much for being here tonight. We appreciate your attendance.